Hello crafty friends, welcome to this top 15 card making hacks video. Today I'm going to share, as the title suggests, my top 15 card making hacks, and these will hopefully help you make the most of your supplies and also help you to perfect and polish your cards with minimal effort. So hack number one is for those who like to make their own card blanks. This is a sheet of A4 hammered textured white card, and I can get two 4x6-ish inch card blanks out of this. And the quickest and easiest way I found to do this is to use my bone folder and add a score line all the way down the middle. I can then fold this in half and crease that score line, and I've made one big massive long card, and I can cut this in half by making a little mark halfway down and then popping it in my guillotine, lining up that little mark that I've just made and slicing. And now I've got two card blanks. So by scoring and then folding, you only have to score once and cut once. If you cut then score, you have to cut once and score twice. So that's just a very quick little time saver. Hack number two is for those who like the smooshing technique but don't like the lack of control that you can sometimes get with it. To deal with that lack of control, to take a bit more control of your smooshing, I've created a smoosher. You take some sort of ink, add water to turn it into a paint, or you can start with paint, it doesn't have to be done with ink. You use your smoosher and you can add your smooshing exactly where you want it. I do have a video on how to make a smoosher that is linked in this video's description, and I'll use a scrap bit of white card to pick up the rest of that paint so none of it goes to waste. And you can either dry that and then smoosh again on top, or you can smoosh straight onto wet ink. If you dry it first, you'll get a layered look. If you don't dry it between layers, you'll get a more blended look. So some of this is dry, some of this is wet, so we're going to get a mix of the two. You can make your smooshers in different sizes. You can even use bubble wrap. And I've made a mini smoosher, which I can't locate right now, out of a sponge dauber blending tool. I've got videos for all of those, but here you can see I've added the orange on top of the pink in a really controlled fashion. I've still got that lovely, energetic, smushy look, but it's where I want it. Hack number three is for those who like to blend their inks but don't like the elbow grease necessarily that's involved in blending a whole piece of cardstock. What I found is you can get some really nice blends if you start with coloured cardstock rather than white. So I've got a pale green piece of cardstock here, and I've got some cracked pistachio, distress oxide. You're going to get different effects with different inks, whether they're dye or pigment or hybrid. It's just worth trying it out. But as you can see here, I'm adding a little bit of cracked pistachio over this green cardstock, and I'm getting a really nice ombre. It's fading out here into that green, so it would have taken me a lot of elbow grease and a long time to blend this and this, but as I start with coloured cardstock, I can reduce the amount of ink, reduce the amount of effort, reduce the amount of time. Also got a little bit of evergreen bough here, so I could bring in a darker colour down this end and get a really nice gradation. Could just go all the way around the edge. Obviously, if you were to splatter water on this end of the card and try and lift up the colour, it wouldn't come off because it's printed onto the card, but you would still get some of that oxide look if you did it on the ink part. So it might be suitable for some situations and not others, but it's a really good way of quickly and effortlessly really getting a bit of a change of colour. So hack number four is for those who like to use stencils but don't necessarily have an extensive stencil stash. You can use some of your dies to create stencils. So I've got a bit of packaging here left over from, I think it must have been a pack of stickers. and an aperture die. This cuts these shape holes in card or whatever. I'm going to tape that down to the card and pop it through my die cutting machine. So there you go, you've got a stencil there. Obviously this is not going to give you many uses because it's made out of paper essentially, even though it's kind of glossy, so it might stand up to a bit more use than say regular cardstock. But you can cut stencils from acetate, you can cut stencils from mylar, which is that cloudy plastic that a lot of commercially made stencils are made from. You could run an empty laminating pouch through your laminator to create a bit of plastic that you can die cut from. But there you go, a homemade stencil. And you don't just have to use aperture dies, you can create apertures with any dies that you have. Hack number 5 is for those who like the embossing folder look but haven't necessarily got a lot of embossing folders. It's also for those who want to make the most of their stencils and dies. So for dry embossing with your die cutting machine, you need to set your sandwich up for dry embossing. On my machine, that means putting the rubber mat on top of the cutting plate instead of underneath it. Next you put your card, next you put your stencil, and then you put your top cutting plate. And I hope you can see there that that stencil has embossed a pattern. You can see the dips in the back and the raised pattern on the front. And in a similar way, you pop your card on, you pop your die on, pop your top cutting plate on, and here you've got a much more pronounced dry embossing. It hasn't cut through, but the cutting edges of the die really do dig into the card. So if you want a more subtle look, use stencils. If you want a more profound look, use dies. Hack number 6 is for those situations where you've had to use scissors or a trimmer or a guillotine to cut down cardstock rather than a die. And you can use one of these, an embossing tool. It's just got a metallic ball on the end, and you can run it round the edge of your non-die cut piece, and it will bevel the edges, it will curve them over slightly like a die does, and you'll get a much nicer, neater, more polished edge to your trimmer, scissor cut, guillotine cut pieces of card. You don't just have to do straight edges, you can go around any shape. Just apply some pressure as you push the ball up against the edge of the card. Hack 7 is for those of us who struggle to get our panels and bits and pieces on our card straight. So I've got a white piece of card here, and I have cut down my blended cardstock, and I want to stick that on there. But how do I get it straight? Well, first of all, I'm going to put this in my guillotine and cut a smidge all the way around. So I'm pushing that edge against this, so the cut should be perpendicular, 90 degrees. And then I rotate it so that the edge I just cut goes flush against that, and I'm going to trim a little bit off. So this corner should be 90 degrees now. I'm going to go around one more time here and push it flush. That should be 90 degrees. And then this one we've got, again, flush against that. So that should be 90 degrees. So this should now be a perfect rectangle. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So corner 1 is now 90 degrees. Corner 2 is now 90 degrees. Corner 3 is now 90 degrees. And corner 4 is now 90 degrees. Now I'm going to pop some tape runner on the back of this, and I'm going to hold it above there. I'm going to keep my finger in between the two pieces so that I don't accidentally stick it down before I'm ready. And I do find it really helpful to look at it straight on. Don't try and have this flat and do it that way, because you won't get the right perspective. Pick it up so you're looking at it straight on. Hack 8 is for those who don't really know where to put things on the front of their card, where looks best. I have a whole series called Levelling Up Your Layouts that you might find helpful, but the easiest hack is to create a rule of thirds grid. Take your card blank and then take a piece of acetate that's the same size as your card blank. Measure the width, divide it by 3 and draw a line all the way up like that. Measure the height, divide it by 3 and draw lines across. So you've divided your acetate into 9 equal parts. And this will really help you with placement. You can make one of these for every card size that you use. And I picked up a really good tip from one of the members of my Facebook group. And she said she poked a hole at the intersections, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that if she wants to mark where that intersection is, she can just get a pencil, poke it through that little hole, and she's got a perfectly placed mark, a third of the way down and a third of the way in, and you can do that on any of those 4 holes. But you can use your rule of thirds acetate grid to help you with placement. So this is just a postage stamp that I cut from a bit of mixed media. I can place it on this intersection, this one, this one. I could put it in one of the rectangles. I could make a column of them or a row of them. This is just a really nice little way of helping you play with placement. So do check out that Level Up Your Layouts series, because that will give you all the details you need. Hack number 9 is for when you're using a stamping platform and you want to put your stamp on your cardstock. You're not entirely sure where. Stamp might be a little bit mucky, might have a little bit of embossing ink left on it, what have you. Take a piece of acetate, place it over the thing that you're stamping on, then put your stamp on it, and then you can shift this around, test it in different areas or line it up between other things that are already on your panel or piece of card. But when you get it exactly where you want it, you can press your door down, pick up your stamp, move the acetate out the way and stamp, and it'll be in the right place and you won't have got any mucky bits on here. So I think I'm going to stamp this in Evergreen Bow. This is actually a silicone stamp, which doesn't always work brilliantly with Distress Oxides, but I've started, so I'll finish. Hack number 10 comes in very useful when you want to apply a little bit more pressure when stamping with the stamp platform, and that is to use some kind of press tool. This is from an air hockey thing. It's got foam on the bottom and you can press down and just go over it like that, and it applies a bit more pressure, makes it a bit more even, and you're not hurting your hand kind of rubbing along there like that. Hack number 11 is for those who haven't got a very extensive collection of embossing powders, but sometimes you want to emboss in a different colour to the embossing powders that you've got. So I've just inked this up with sticky embossing ink, and I'm going to press that over my Evergreen Bow stamping. If you're using a pigment ink or a slow drying ink, you probably won't have to do the embossing ink step. But what you do is just take some clear embossing powder. I'm using Wow Superfine clear embossing powder because it picks up fine details really well. And then you heat it with your heat tool. So now that has embossed, and it looks like I've used Evergreen Bow coloured embossing powder. You can't tell that that was stamped with coloured ink and clear embossed over the top. It just looks like I've embossed it in green embossing powder. So that can save you lots of money and having lots of different powders by just using your everyday inks and clear embossing powders. So hack number 12 should help you line up your die cuts with their coordinating stamps, and that hack is to use a jig. So I've just got a bit of paper here and I'm going to die cut my flower from it. So I've got my jig here, it's just the outside part from where I die cut it, and I've got some copy paper here and I'm popping that in here. Now I've got my stamp. I've put it on the door of my stamping platform. I'm inking it up with some black ink, and I'm just going to do a quick impression there. So that is where this is going to stamp. And now I'm going to take my jig and line it up over that impression so I get an equal size gap between the edge of the die cut area and the stamped image. I'm going to need to trim a bit off here. I'm going to use some washi tape to hold it in place. And now I can put a die cut in the hole there, and that should stay there, should be in the perfect place for me to stamp that now. So now I can take some tweezers and carefully remove that and set it aside to dry. You might think that's a lot of fuss for just one die cut, but the beauty of this is you can cut out lots of die cuts and then just keep going and put them in your stash somewhere so they're ready to go the next time you want to use this stamp and die set. So that should still be in exactly the right place. And I can do that again and again and again until I've stamped a load of die cuts. And you can even keep the jig itself with your stamp and die set so that you don't have to make a jig the next time. And this will work with any stamp and die set, not just flowers. It's great for those fiddly little sentiment stamp and die sets. There you go, in no time at all I've got a whole bunch of perfectly stamped and die cut flowers. Hack 13 is all about sticking down fiddly die cuts. So this is very fiddly. There are all sorts of ways you can stick these down, but I have, I guess, two preferred ways, and that is to use a sponge dauber. Now this I've been using for quite a long time with my white glue, and it is completely soaked and the white glue has dried on it, so it doesn't feel very spongy anymore, but actually it works just fine. So I just pick up white glue with my dauber here and pounce it on. That's a really easy way of adding glue to the back of fiddly die cuts. The other way is to use a glue dotter. This is just a cut down silicone basting brush. I've got a video about how to make that. So you just pick up white glue on your end of your brush here and dot it on. I wanted a way of adding, say, like micro glue dots of actual glue, and that's what I came up with. And now that's got glue all over the back, I can place that on, and I'm just going to press it down with a bit of paper towel just to protect it from my fingers and my fingers from the glue. And now I've stuck down a fiddly die cut. So sponge dauber and a glue dotter. Check out the video link below if you want to know how to make that. So if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I love to add little dots like enamel dots to my card fronts, and I've got lots of homemade enamel dots in here. Got gold, silver, copper, rose gold, glitter, foil, what have you. And I mainly make them using this die. So this is a cover plate die that cuts out different size circles, and it's the circle part that I keep in here. I've got other dies that do similar jobs with different size circles. I've got a couple that make kind of wonky circles, which are fun. This one and these little ones make various sizes of sequins. This one, again, different size of circles. These are bigger than the ones I get out of here, so if I want a really big one. And then this one makes lots and lots of teeny tiny ones. So I've got some little gold ones here, and what I tend to do is I take matte gel medium, which is a gel-like glue that dries matte, so if any seeps out from underneath, it won't show up on your card front because, as I say, it dries matte. So I put some little dots where I want to put my enamel dots, and then I've got a wax picker-upper thing. So this is actually hack number 15. Use a wax picker-upper thing to pick up your fiddly bits. So this is wax, and I just warm it in my hand because it makes it a little bit more tacky, I think. And I pick up a dot and I place it on, whoops, one of my little bits of glue. It's much easier than using tweezers, and it doesn't mark the foil. Sometimes the tweezers can leave little pokey marks in them, and it works with even the tiniest little circles. So that's great if you want flat enamel dots, but what if you want dimensional, where you can take glossy accents or Nouveau Crystal Glaze or some other kind of varnish and just add some on the top, enough to flood the top and create a little bit of a dome. So I just put a little squeeze into the middle and then sort of work it to the edge, and that will dry clear and give it a glossy dome. You can also do something similar with Nouveau drops. These don't come out quite so runny, so they take a little bit more of an effort to get that kind of flooded dome look. But you can add that on top. It comes out cloudy, this one, but it will dry clear, and it's got a little bit of iridescent glitter in it. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I've given you a few hacks and hints and tips and tricks and techniques that you can use in your own card making. If I have, please do let me know in the comments, and feel free to share any hacks and tips of your own. The more ideas, the merrier. I do have a playlist on my channel, and it has over 100 videos that are sort of hack-based, tip-based, technique, ultimate guide-based. It will hopefully give you lots more ideas. If you'd like to watch that, that is linked in this video's description, along with all the other videos I've mentioned today and a few that I haven't. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, and I'll see you back here very soon for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.